So good morning, everyone. I think it's very much around the hour, but we let it's I know it's early in the morning and people might get caught in traffic, so we just give a few minutes for people to settle down, and then our colleague Wei will take over and introduce the event in about 1 to 2 minutes. The floor is yours.
What time you sleep? Hello, hello.
I'm not mute.
We can start now, Jimmy.
Good morning, partners and colleagues. I hope everyone has been keeping safe, healthy, and well. Welcome to the to transactions, banks top with screen and winning the banks in Vietnam. I am honored to host today's green and sustainable loan frameworks day. Yeah, so a little bit about the housekeeping before we start our webinar. So if you have any questions for the speakers, please use the Q&A box in the Zoom. You can see here. And if you have any technical support questions or requests, please use the chat box. Or if you have any question that you would like to have immediate answer, also please use this chat box. For the translation services, we have the English and Vietnamese in live format, and you can use the box here for interpretation with the globe icon. And this webinar is recorded for future reference. Yeah, next slide, please. Yes, and this is the agenda for our event today. Firstly, we will begin today's program with a sharing from Mr. Tung Ho, a country director of Allotrope Partners, about the company's activities and progress. And after that, Mr. Motokatsu Ban, the managing director of Mizuho Bank, and also Mr. Dat Quốc Hiệp, non-Japanese head of Vietnam of Mizuho Bank, will share with us about the sustainable finance framework and products. And after that, Ms. Cheryl Tay, a manager sustainable corporate solutions from Morningstar and Sustainalytics, will discuss some overview and insights about the sustainable finance framework and the value of second party opinions, or SPO. And to continue the program, we will have a sharing from Mr. Dongchen, Director of CAS Energy, about the green project and transaction to be facilitated under bank's framework. And finally, we will have a Q&A session where all speakers will answer your questions that you put into the Q&A chat box, or you can ask questions directly. And finally, will be our closure. Thank you. Next slide, please. Yeah, and firstly, we will begin with our first presentation from Mr. Tung Ho, and Mr. Tung Ho will share about Allotrope Partners as well as screening the bank's activities and progress. So please, let's give a round of virtual applause, and Tung, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Kiwei, for the kind introductions, and thank you all for being here today. My name is Tung Ho, and I think firstly, I'd like to give a little bit of context on Allotrope Partners. For those who don't know, I think Allotrope Partners is more widely recognizable in Vietnam under our Clean Energy Investment Accelerator initiative, where we partner with WRI and NREL to help brands like Nike, Apple, H&M Group, and others in decarbonizing their supply chain. This can use a variety of solutions, such as rooftop solar, the DPPA, and thermal decarbonization. In addition to that, we are also involved with the carbon financing aspect in Vietnam, where we work with the World Bank and Australia's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in perhaps spearheading and piloting some projects that make use of the voluntary carbon market. Last but not least, I think we're also a little bit involved with project development. This is exemplified by our first distributed energy storage project in Saigon High-Tech Park, which we completed last year, and it has been in operation ever since. Although I think leading to what we're doing today, and also starting from last year, with some of the background in green finance from Philippines, we have launched Green Little Bank Vietnam together with Vietnam Bank Association last year, where we have brought together about more than 160 participants in one of the, I think, most publicized events, where we bring in partners such as the International Capital Market Association, ICMA, partners such as HSBC, BGGI, and KPMG Vietnam, to share about perhaps what is known as Green Finance 101 for the banking sector. We cover topics such as ESG due diligence, climate risk assessment, and green products for last year. And that served as the foundation for the event this year. So moving to this year, I think I don't want to take too much time from speakers. We target to firstly, from the beginning of the year, we work with banks and screen banks and identify champion banks to really engage and help them with the process of greening the banking process. And then for now, I think with enough knowledge and information, we have started this webinar on the importance of sustainable finance framework and its various iterations, together with how that will lead to actual transaction on the ground. So thank you so much for being here today. I'll leave the floor to Ray to introduce the next speaker and with this great program that we have.
Thank you, Tung, for your brief yet informative overview of your activities. And again, please, for the audience, please feel free to send in your questions in the Q&A box at any point during the program. This event will be recorded, summarized with keynotes, and posted on Allotrope Partners website for future reference. To continue our program, I would like to invite Mr. Motokatsu Ban from Mizuho Bank and Mr. Đặng Quốc Hiệp from Mizuho Bank. Yeah, they will be sharing insights about the sustainable finance framework and products. So Mr. Ban and Mr. Hiệp, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for your kind introduction, Ms. Gwen. And good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time today. And my name is Ban. I'm a Joint General Manager of the Mizuho Bank, Hanoi branch. And first, let me briefly introduce myself. And I joined Mizuho in 2005 after graduated university in Japan and have consistently worked in business promotion. I have covered a wide range of the companies, from large company and SME, also in industry type. I've had the experience of taking a central role of closing several kinds of large deals, syndicated loan, MBO finance, and cross-border M&A deals, and so on. It has been almost 4 years since I came to Vietnam in October 2019. I mainly focus on the business promotion for Japanese client and M&A origination activity for foreign country clients, not only for Japanese companies, and also Korean, Taiwanese, Thai, Malaysian clients as well. Recently, in the power sector in particular, but Japanese companies are focused on the Vietnamese market and very interested in finding investment opportunities and securing finance, and we offer advice on this. About Mizuho, we are one of the largest Japanese bank, and it has been 70 years since Mizuho opened its Hanoi branch in 1996. Not only do we support the Japanese company expanding into Vietnam, but we also do business with many Vietnamese companies. I feel very honored to be able to do presentation today. I'd like to thank all Allotrope Partners for giving us this opportunity. Today, I would like to explain our strategy and initiative to achieve a low carbon society. This page is today's agenda. As a global systemically important bank called G-SHIBS, we at the Mizuho have placed to climate change a key pillar of our business strategy, and will contribute to the realization of a low carbon society by 2050 through the continuous effort of our whole group. In early 2023, we revised the net zero transition plan and strengthened the following initiative in terms of governance strategy, risk management indicators, and target to achieve net zero by 2050. I'd like to explain it more detail from this page. Let me outline the strategy. Mizuho will work with customers to achieve a structural transformation of the economy and the industry, the commercialization of the new technology to realize a low carbon society. We will also expand our domestic and overseas network and the customer base, and expand our effort to market in Japan and overseas. Mizuho will provide the solid transition capital needed for this effort to foster human capital and deepen expertise. What I want to say most today is summarized on this page. For us, as a financial institution, I believe it is a duty for us as a stakeholder living in this modern society to conduct economic activities that are environmentally friendly. In addition, financial institutions, just only us, will not be able to achieve the low carbon society, of course. It can be done without the cooperation of the government, companies, and all citizens. To be honest, unfortunately, in Vietnam, I feel that the idea has not yet spread widely among the people. In fact, even though various green finance product has existing, please keep the previous page, please. Page number 4, yes. And in fact, even though various green finance products has existed in Japan for a long time, it took a very long time for them to be put into practical use. Because companies and the shareholders who prioritize economic rationality were not convinced. Maybe even now it's not enough in Japan also. However, we believe that it is finally here to stay that companies conduct environmentally friendly activities and that consumers pay for them. In other words, products made by a company that are not environmentally friendly are no longer acceptable for consumers. This trend will accelerate in the future, and the companies that do not care about the environment will be eliminated. Please move to next page. Thank you. Mizuho will substantially increase its sustainable finance goals by 2030, including 50 trillion yen in environmental and climate change finance from 25 trillion yen to 100 trillion yen. 100 trillion yen is equivalent to 700 billion US dollar, a huge amount of money. And we will pay an internal finance function to generate money flow towards solving environmental and social issues. We also increase the disbursement of environmental and climate change related finance from 12 trillion yen to 50 trillion yen. And it's also equivalent to 350 billion US dollar. However, it is estimated that decarbonization will cost 4 trillion US dollar per year globally. So Mizuho alone will not be able to provide sufficient funds. It is also Mizuho's role to partner with other like-minded international and regional partnership to create money flow and a sustainable society and to provide funding to customers who are working together to challenge to transition to decarbonization. Please move to the next page. This chart is a brief summary of the relationship between energy supply and consumption. Mizuho recognizes that needs not only for energy supply, but also for impactful effort across sectors, such as energy demand to shift away from an economic and a social structure dependent on fossil fuels. In light of this, Mizuho has outlined the following 7 elements for achievement a low carbon society. Number 1, generate low carbon from energy sources. Number 2, material and process transition and manufacturing process energy savings. Number 3, energy conservation, adoption of renewable energy at the production stage. Number 4, electrification and energy transition. And number 5, using technology to store CO2 and in collection. Number 6, absorb CO2 in nature. And number 7, take advantage of the circular economy. In addition, to identify areas to focus on from the perspective of decarbonization, considering emission, opportunities, risks, and the characteristic of Mizuho's portfolio and customer base, we will provide funds and know-how to promote related and next generation technology. Please move to the next page. Until now, Mizuho's main effort in the power sector have been reduced credit exposure and coal-fired power plants to support the development and innovation of renewable energy projects. The result as shown on slide you see. The detail of renewable energy project are listed on the left. I think you can understand that we invested or finance the project of global players as well as the Japanese companies. In addition, Mizuho has provided loan to Chugoku Electric Power and Kyushu Electric Power in connection with the transition to decarbonization. Other than that, the chart on the lower right side shows that Mizuho is steadily reducing the number of coal-fired power plants in credit exposure. Please move to the next page. It is important to anticipate and understand the needs of customers to help them transition while managing risks approximately and create business opportunities. Mizuho will continue to expand investment to renewable energy and nuclear power in Japan and overseas as short, medium, and long-term business opportunity to achieve net zero by 2050. In addition, investment in next generation technologies and strengthening and upgrading of transmission and distribution network will be targeted. Mizuho, on the other hand, identified companies with coal, oil, and gas-fired power as major business as transition risk sectors, and monitors their exposures, established and promoted to reduce exposure of high-risk clients. Based on these standards, we also assess risk as a basis for funding management. Please move to the next page. This is a conceptual diagram of risk management in carbon-related field. Mizuho has established policies and implemented risk controls for exposure in high-risk area of the carbon-related sector. A framework was established to examine reliability and transparency of customer transition strategy to decarbonization with the aim of facilitating their business restructuring. If we can confirm that your migration strategy meets the standard of our company's internal validation process, Mizuho will fund your business. By assisting customers in developing and implementing decarbonization transition strategies, we believe we can appropriately manage the reduced medium to long-term transition risk. Of a total of 1.6 trillion yen in loan to high-risk area customers, 400 billion yen has been found to meet Mizuho's loan criteria. We will continue to engage in dialogue with our customers, increase the number of projects that meet our needs, and continue our support. Please move to the next page. Mizuho completed a shift of around 70% of domestic electricity consumption to renewable energy to achieve a carbon neutrality in scope 1 and 2 by 2030. It accounts for 80% of Mizuho's greenhouse GHG emission in Japan. Hereafter, we will consider shifting to renewable energy for leased property in and outside Japan that required coordination among related parties and every introduction of electric vehicle as well. So page 12 and 13 are specific example of initiatives undertaken by Mizuho. Please move to next page. Next page, please. Yes, this is a renewable power project, and we provide the loan for this project. But I will skip the explanation of this page because I think you will understand this if you see the slide. So please move to page 13. Next page, please. Yes. In 2021, China Gas has successfully introduced the first sustainability-linked loan called SLL in Hong Kong, and with Mizuho acting as one of the mandatory lead arranger. SLL are any types of loan instrument and or contingent facility such as bonding line, guarantee line, or letter of credit, for which the economic characteristics can vary depending on whether the borrower achieves ambitious material and quantifiable predetermined sustainability performance objectives. The use of proceeds in relation to SLL is not the determinant in its categorization, and in most instances, SLL will be used for general corporate purpose. Instead, SLL look to support a borrower in improving in sustainability performance. The borrower's sustainability performance is measured by applying predefined SPTs to predefined KPIs. That's it for the explanation for the slide. And finally, as I said at the beginning, I don't think the idea of paying for environment is prevalent in Vietnam as a society at large today. Maybe it would be best if we could offer financial products that are environmentally friendly while reducing cost. There are ways to return to the money collected as taxes to the private sector in the form of the state subsidies and by government, and it's easy to understand. And Mizuho also, of course, support such effort to the client. On the other hand, in the future, society as a whole need to create a system in which companies' effort to protect the environment will lead to economic benefits. Just as in the Western countries and Japan, and I think that will change. At that time, it is important for us to think about what we can do as a private financial institutions without depending on the government and to carry it out. Vietnam is a fast-changing country. The time need to change may be faster than in developed countries. Mizuho will continue to make a concerted effort to ensure the financial institution can provide utmost support to Vietnamese society at this time. Thank you for listening today. That's all from my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think Mr. Tung Ho has a question for you, Mr. Bang. So Tung, please go ahead.
Firstly, I'd like to thank Mr. Mutokasu-san for this wonderful comprehensive look into Mizuho Bank, pathways and strategies in green financing. And perhaps I think there will be more questions during our Q&A session, but I think as a transition to our next speaker, our first question to you is, what should a bank, going back to the topic of today is the green finance framework, what should the bank take into account when defining the scope and the objective of the first green finance framework from your experience? Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tung, for your question. So this is here. I'm the non-Japanese head of Mizuho in Vietnam, and I'm also the ESG accelerator for Mizuho in Vietnam. So let me answer the question. So actually, regarding your question about the scope and the objective of the green finance framework for the banks in Vietnam, so based on our experience, so basically the green, or let's say the sustainable finance framework is basically a manifest of the bank's commitment to sustainability goals, right? So it means that before establishing the framework, so the bank should identify the key priorities, the green business and activities, and also the positive environmental and social impact that the bank would like to create and ensure that the environment and also the social risk management, governance structure, disclosure mechanism are in place. So basically, these are the things that the bank need to take into consideration. But there is one point that I would like to emphasize again in here, that together with defining the scope and the objective of the green finance framework, it is very important that the bank should have the necessary committed resources to do that. And the first and the very foremost step in here is that normally for the banks which are really committed, they should set up a green or sustainable project team or committee with the experts who can support with all of the objective and the framework going forward. So for example, in Mizuho Bank, we have the experts in ESG, but together with that, in each and every country, we have the country ESG accelerator who will support with the framework and with the process. And basically, the Green Sustainable Finance Project Team Committee, based on our experience, should at least consist of the following people, like the Treasury function, sustainability function, business, legal, and also investor relations. So these are some of our thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hiep. And that is wonderful insight on how I think local banks in Vietnam may start their journey towards, establishing a green or sustainable finance framework, taking lessons from, pioneering banks like Mizuho and others. And we hope that this session will further, assist them in this process. And I think that's a good pathway to the next speaker, right? So I'll leave the floor to you. Yeah.
Sure. And please feel free for the audience. So if there is any question or you need further discussion, so please feel free to reach out to us. So via Allotrope Partners or at our contacts that we gave you earlier. And happy to receive more questions during the Q&A section. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ban and Mr. Hiep, for sharing about Mizuho Bank's experiences and expertise in establishing the green finance frameworks and products, which we believe are highly valuable for banks and other financial institutions in general. Yeah, so we are sure we will have more questions in our Q&A session. And so to the next presentation. Yeah, thank you. So we now move on to our next speaker, who will discuss sustainable finance framework and the value of second-party opinions, XPO. So please join me to welcome Ms. Charote from Morningstar Sustainalytics. So the floor is yours, Ms. Charote. Please go ahead.
Thanks, everyone. Good morning and nice to meet you. My name is Cheryl, and I'm the manager from Morningstar Sustainalytics Sustainable Corporate Solutions. It's a pleasure to be here today to share with you about the work that we do. And hopefully we could answer some questions around second-party opinions or the setting up of the green finance framework. So just a quick introduction about who we are. So Morningstar acquired Sustainalytics back in 2020, but Sustainalytics as a company, we've been around for over 30 years. The market knows us primarily for our ESG risk ratings because we have one of the largest ESG risk ratings universe of over 14,000 companies. But we're also known as the leading second-party opinion provider in the market, having done over 1,000 second-party opinions. We're present in over 17 countries, and I am based in Singapore. So maybe just to share a little bit more about the business. So we have two parts of the business, one side that caters to the investors. So this is primarily where we provide our ESG risk ratings for investors to do some portfolio screening around their, and do some investment analysis on their portfolio sustainability performance. I sit on the corporate side of the business where we provide second-party opinions that support labeled transactions such as green bonds, green loans, and we have a couple of slides at the end to share with you some of the work that we have done with some of the banks regionally. Domestically in Vietnam, we supported VP Bank on their first green loan, as well as recently we worked on their social loan framework as well. In terms of the other types of solutions that Sustainalytics provides, we have a wide range. So besides second-party opinions, we also offer ESG risk ratings for banks and corporates. We also have some benchmarking services, as well as some other tools like what we call eligibility guides. So eligibility guides is a bit more of an advisory co-developed solution where Sustainalytics works together with the bank to develop a taxonomy that you can use in the bank, and happy to share about that product perhaps in subsequent webinar sessions. But today we'll be focusing on our solution for the second party opinion. All right, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with the type of the sustainable finance instruments in the market. There are quite a few. So you might have heard of green loans, social loans, or even sustainability loans and bonds. These are essentially what we call, or what the market calls, use of proceed instruments. And what that means is that 100% of the proceeds from the bond or for the loan needs to be applied to eligible green assets. For the bank's case, that would be green loans, or if you're doing a social bond, it will 100% of it has to go towards eligible social projects or social loans. The bank will set up a framework, and then you would appoint someone like us, an experienced second-party opinion verifier, to verify that your framework is in line with these market principles. And the key market principles would be the ICMA, the International Capital Market Association's Green Bond Principles, and then they have the loan equivalent, which is the LMA, the Loan Market Association, or the Asia Pacific Loan Market Association Green Loan Principles. Very often we see banks setting up a sustainability framework, and that essentially is a mix of green and social projects in that framework. So that's why I've highlighted it here today. Sustainability linked, which is what Mr. Ban was talking about earlier as well. We do also are able to provide second-party opinions to sign off on sustainability-linked loan frameworks. But that said, we haven't had too many banks issue SLBs at present, perhaps because it's a bit more challenging for a bank to issue this form of instrument. Lastly, we have a last label called transition, and this is a bucket of what we call, hard to abate or carbon intensive sectors that need to transition away from their heavy fossil fuel emitting technologies towards like a greener technologies for us to meet that net zero by 2050 targets. But again, for the purposes of today, I'll be just talking about the sustainability use of proceeds instrument and how we can provide a second party opinion to support that. All right, moving on to the next slide here. So this is what is typically included in a framework that you would set up. So the first, and this is modeled after the ICMA Green Bond Principles or the Sustainability Bond Principles. There are 4 key components. The first component talks about the use of proceeds. So where are you applying the bond proceeds to? What projects? Are they green? Are they social? And then the second talks about kind of like the internal processes. So this is also what was Mizuho Bank was talking about earlier about, do you have a committee that you have at the bank which you use to select the eligible projects? And then pillar number 3 is how are you managing these green bond or sustainability bond proceeds? Do you have a tracker? Do you have an allocation, Excel? And then lastly is the reporting. Are you reporting on an annual basis to inform bond investors the projects that you have allocated the bond monies to, and what was the impact of these projects? So we'll move on to the next slide and you'll get a better idea. But essentially, the framework that most banks set up would include these 4 components. And then Sustainalytics as an independent verifier will come in to provide a second party opinion on this framework to confirm whether it's in line with the ICMA principles and whether what the bank views as green in fact meets what the market and investors view as green or social. Just wanted to flag as well, there has been recent updates to the loan principles early in February this year. The loan principles have been around for quite some time, so since 2018, and so these market principles, they do get updated, quite frequently, every 2 years or a year, and this is to typically to include clarifications around the original principle. So this is why, even though there is no expiry date on the second party opinion, it is often recommended that you update the second party opinion as well as your framework every 2 years or a year, because the market principles do get updated as well. Moving on to the next slide is about why you should get a second party opinion. So I often like to view getting a second party opinion or an independent verifier to look at your framework. It's almost like you're buying insurance, because you have someone like us with a very credible brand name that investors are confident and are familiar with our brand, to review your framework and to comment whether A, it's in line with the market principles, and B, whether they meet the definitions of what investors and the market views to be eligible for green or social. And this is how our second party looks like. This is an example that I have pulled for a Philippine bank called Union Bank. So like I mentioned, a lot of banks typically have a sustainable finance framework where they finance a mixture of green and social assets or loans, and they decide to call this a finance framework because they intend to issue bonds as well as perhaps receive loans from people like your IFC or your ADB. So you can consider setting up a sustainable finance framework which captures both types of green and social use of proceeds and multiple instruments. We're also able to include sign-off to the ASEAN principles. So you have the ASEAN Sustainability Bond Standards and the ASEAN Green Bond Standards, which are fairly similar to the ICMA ones, except that it has a bit more of a regional flavor to it. Occasionally, we also see some banks include a product level sign-off. So if, let's say, down the line, the bank wants to issue or set up or originate a corporate deposit product that is green or sustainable deposit, we can additionally sign off that program in the same second party opinion. So this is just a bit of a unique case to just showcase that, if you wanted to add on a corporate deposit product, we're also able to sign off. But in this case, because there are no green deposit principles, Sustainalytics will sign off to the principles of impact and transparency for the deposit instrument. In terms of the documents that we require, so again, our second party opinion is on the framework. So we would be primarily assessing the content in the framework. The project team would also often ask you, what are some of the example projects that you're looking to finance under those use of proceed categories? We will also take a look at your annual report if you have, as well as your CSR report, as well as your environmental and social risk mitigating policies to comment about your risk management capability. We'll also look at your company strategy, and essentially what you get is really an opinion, an independent one, to comment on how credible and impactful your framework is and whether it aligns to these market principles. There is no management interviews, there is no site visits. This is purely a limited assurance piece of work where we undertake over a period of 4 to 5 weeks. So just diving in a little bit more into our second party opinions to show you what's inside. So Section 1 comments about the alignment. It's a bit of a summary. It comments about the alignment to the relevant principles and whether your reporting, your management, and your allocation is in line with the market. Section 2 comments about your sustainability strategy as a bank. And this is where we look at things like your sustainability report, your policies and your programs, as well as what I mentioned earlier around your environmental and social risk management policies, to comment about your risk management ability. Section 3, we also comment about the impact of the use of proceeds. So the project team will ask you, with this loan or with this bond, what are you primarily financing? So if you're primarily financing MSME lending, then we will comment about the impact of MSME lending in Vietnam context. And optionally, you can have separate add-ons, a bit like a salad. You can customize it. You can add things. So if you so wish, you can add on an ICMA climate transition finance handbook sign-off if you want us to sign off on your transition strategy. You can also add on that alignment to that green and sustainable deposits product, where we sign off to the principles of impact and transparency. And if you so wish, and because you're attracting EU investors or EU lenders, you can also additionally sign up to the EU taxonomy. But to be honest, I haven't seen too many banks in our region adopting the EU taxonomy alignment. All right, so I'm going to move on now to the typical process. So it's about, let's mention, it's about a 4 to 5 week process where, what will happen is that, 2 days before kickoff, the project SPO kickoff, we will ask that you share with us your framework so that the project team can review the framework and see if there's any clarifying questions that they may have. And then during the kickoff meeting, the project team is a nice, short and sweet 30-minute introduction to introduce you to the project members that will be working on your second party opinion, and to share with you, what's inside the second party opinion, to share the timelines, to share any clarifying questions. And then we will begin that evaluation of your framework. And it takes us about, maybe about 2.5 weeks to come up with a first draft of the second party opinion. And then you, as the bank, you have a chance to review our draft of the second party opinion and provide comments on it. And then we'll take that comments and we'll turn around a second draft before we share with you the final second party opinion. And at this point, we ask that you also finalize your framework, get it board approved at this point, and then we can submit it together with our internal review committee before before you go to market. So typically, if you're raising a bond, you would on that day, you would you will publish your framework on your website. You will also publish our second party opinion on your website. Maybe you might have a press release, and you might also reach out to us to publish our second party opinion on our website. So the whole process takes about 4 to 5 weeks, and it comprises of 2 rounds of feedback. One tip that I would like to suggest is that when you come to us with your framework, come to us with the framework in a very good draft stage. So not finalized, not board approved. And this is because very often the project team, when reviewing the framework and having these clarifying questions, they may point out some aspects of the framework that are not market aligned. So you may wish to tweak or adjust your framework so that it meets more market standards. And so that's why what is recommended here during step 1 is to share with us a good draft framework that is not board approved. And you only board approve your framework towards the final stages, also when the second party opinion is almost ready to be finalized. I'm coming up to the last few slides already. So just wanted to share with you Sustainalytics. We continue to be the #1 second party opinion provider globally with a 24% market share. And in terms of, climate bond and initiative verified deals, we are also one of the leading verifiers in the market. And then I just wanted to share with you a little bit about our post-issuance reporting solutions. So if you recall, of the 4 pillars, the last pillar is around reporting. You can choose, if you so like to, come back to Sustainalytics after a year of issuing your bond to do that reporting. So this is an example of Mizuho's green bond, which they issued in 2020, where Sustainalytics provided a second party opinion on. They came back to do an annual review to inform bond investors where did the bond proceeds get allocated to, which projects, and what was the impact. And the annual review report is a much shorter light touch verification, which also involves 2 to 3 weeks of desktop research to confirm that Mizuho had applied the bond proceeds as per their framework. All right, and last example I wanted to share with you is an impact report. So this is an offering or a solution that we have launched last year, where Sustainalytics can help you as the issuer quantify the impact of the financed impact of your bond. So this solution can be a pre-issuance or a post-issuance solution. So if it's a pre-issuance solution, you can proactively communicate to investors this is the expected impact of the green bond if you were to subscribe to our paper. Or you can do this as a post-issuance report. So we can help you quantify what was the actual finance impact of the bond. So an example of a bank that we worked with is OCBC. It's a leading regional bank based in Singapore, and they raised a sustainability bond back in 2019, and we did their impact reporting for them in 2021, and this is how the impact report looks like. It's very visual. You can see in terms of carbon emissions, how many tons of carbon emissions was avoided, and where were the projects located, how many cars or trees does this carbon emissions roughly translate to. We also worked with Toyota Leasing Thailand, a car leasing company in Thailand, to do their second party opinion as well as their post-issuance impact reporting to quantify what was the carbon emissions avoided, financed from their bond, which was financing hybrid vehicles. And one last slide here to share with you is about, just to leave you with one message here today, is that there are many instruments, tools that you can use to communicate your bank's climate transition strategy. So one of the solutions is that you could go to market to raise a bond, or you could get a loan from the multilateral development banks like the IFC, World Bank, or ADB. You could get a second party opinion, for a loan framework or a bond that you're going to market with. But also we have, a Sustainalytics ESG risk rating. So increasingly investors, because they use our ESG risk ratings in their portfolio research and analysis, you can also use this ESG risk rating to communicate how well you're managing your ESG risk. And also, if you want to quantify some of the impacts of your bank and the bonds and your financing, we're also able to do an impact reporting instrument. So many types of tools, depending on your readiness and where you are in your sustainability journey. I have a couple of slides here at the back, but I'm just going to check with Hugh for time. Do we have time, or should I just wrap up?
Yeah, we have a few minutes more, so yeah, we can continue.
Okay. I will just take one more minute to just share with you a little bit of the work that we have done for VP Bank. So this is VP Bank. We worked with them, I think, almost 3 years ago now. We started with them on their green finance framework, and then 2 years later, they came back to actually do a separate framework for social projects. So here you can see these are some of the categories that VP Bank financed. In that case, they looked at things like financial inclusion, employment generation, access to essential services like healthcare, education, and even drinking water, sanitation, and telecom network. So lots of different types of social categories. The key thing to note with social frameworks is the target population. So that's the one thing you need to bear in mind. If you're setting up a social framework, you need to clearly state who is the target audience, who is the beneficiary. And very often, for sectors like MSME or financial inclusion, you would have definitions.
Inclusion is defined as the availability and equality of opportunities to access financial services.
That's my iPad. Yeah, so you would have a target population, maybe like women or SMEs meeting a certain size. So you need to define what is the target audience that you're looking at. So take a look at VP Bank's social finance framework. We have also done other works for other regional banks like Bank Mandiri in Indonesia, where they include both green and social use of proceeds categories. And these tend to be quite similar from bank to bank because banks often finance very similar kind of projects in their own countries, like solar panels, green buildings, water management projects. And lastly, in Thailand, there was a women bond that we did many years ago, and this is also quite interesting if you want to specifically finance women in SME financing or microfinance companies, setting up microfinance companies for women. All right, thank you so much for your time today. I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Ms. Day. Yeah, for your insightful information about the second party opinion and the significant role in the establishment of clean finance framework. And I think we are now having a few questions for you, but I think we should wait until our Q&A session for your answer. And we look forward to that. And so next presentation, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, so in the next presentation, Mr. Dong Chun from CAS Energy will be presenting about the green project and transaction to be facilitated under bank's framework. So Mr. Dong Chun, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Cảm ơn Allotrope Partners đã cho tôi một cơ hội được chia sẻ cái góc nhìn của mình. Phát triển các cái dự án xanh tại Việt Nam, tôi nhìn thấy cũng như là các cái thách thức mà chúng tôi gặp phải để chúng ta có thể là hợp tác tốt hơn trong cái việc là làm cho Việt Nam xanh hơn, phát triển bền vững hơn. Thì xin kể câu chuyện về CS là chúng tôi là một cái công ty đã có 20 năm kinh nghiệm. Tôi có hơn 50 kỹ sư chất lượng cao. Tôi đã hoàn thành hơn 200 dự án và đặc biệt là chúng tôi đang sở hữu và vận hành 20 MW solar rooftop. Chúng tôi là một trong những cái nhà phát triển năng động sáng tạo, cung cấp các cái giải pháp là xanh và công bằng. Ở các lĩnh vực của chúng tôi hoạt động thì nó bao gồm là smart grid và đấu nối hệ thống điện, các dự án năng lượng tái tạo, các dự án nông nghiệp thông minh, tuần hoàn, bền vững, như là chúng tôi cung cấp các cái dịch vụ xanh hóa. Với smart grid, lưới điện thông minh và kết nối hệ thống điện, chúng tôi cung cấp các giải pháp, xây dựng các trung tâm điều khiển giám sát vận hành tối ưu hệ thống điện, như cung cấp các cái giải pháp để kết nối dự án năng lượng tái tạo, như là các cái dự án liên quan đến hệ thống điện của Việt Nam. Về năng lượng tái tạo thì chúng tôi tập trung vào năng lượng mặt trời và năng lượng mặt trời mái nhà, cũng như là năng lượng sinh khối, bao gồm là năng lượng biomass và biogas. Đây là những cái nguồn mà Việt Nam chúng ta rất là sẵn và cũng đang chưa được sử dụng tốt, tận dụng tốt các cái cơ hội này. Về nông nghiệp thông minh bền vững, chúng tôi đã phát triển các cái giải pháp về tự động hóa cho nông nghiệp, các cái giải pháp mà nông nghiệp đô thị trên mái nhà, hay là các cái trang trại tuần hoàn. Các giải pháp của chúng tôi đưa ra, chúng tôi nâng cấp các cái trang trại vườn ao chuồng theo truyền thống trở thành các cái trang trại là vườn ao chuồng và năng lượng tái tạo, xây dựng một cái hệ thống tuần hoàn hoàn chỉnh, cũng như là cung cấp các cái giải pháp để giảm phát thải khí nhà kính, bù trừ phát thải khí nhà kính. Các thực phẩm cung cấp bởi các trang trại này là các thực phẩm bền vững, không gây phát thải. Các cái dự án của chúng tôi về xanh hóa đô thị, xanh hóa mái nhà đô thị đã được gọi là chúng tôi tiến hành làm trong 4 năm qua, và các cái kết quả nó đạt rất là tốt. Chúng ta vừa phủ xanh được mái nhà, vừa có thực phẩm bền vững, vừa xử lý chất thải, vừa thu nước mưa, và đồng thời là cũng cung cấp bổ sung năng lượng tái tạo. Đây là những cái giải pháp, những cái dự án chúng tôi đã thực hiện, và các giải pháp này đã được kiểm chứng ở trên thực tế. Và hiện nay chúng tôi đang tiến hành các cái giải pháp, cung cấp các giải pháp về xanh hóa các tòa nhà, cung cấp năng lượng tái tạo, sử dụng năng lượng tiết kiệm và hiệu quả, như là các giải pháp giảm phát thải khí nhà kính, như bù trừ phát thải khí nhà kính. Chúng tôi đang xây dựng các cái giải pháp về nguồn năng lượng phân tán cho đô thị, phủ xanh mái nhà, xây dựng các cái mô hình kinh tế tuần hoàn, như là cung cấp các giải pháp xanh hóa cho sản xuất, cho du lịch, cho phân phối. Và với cái nỗ lực của chúng tôi thì chúng tôi cũng đã được ghi nhận. Tuần trước thì chúng tôi cũng đã được ghi nhận là một trong top 50 công ty phát triển bền vững của Việt Nam. Và chúng tôi cũng đang nhận được nhiều cái sự hỗ trợ từ quốc tế, như là từ USAID cho cái chương trình là an ninh năng lượng đô thị Việt Nam, hay là chương trình CFA của Anh đang hỗ trợ chúng tôi về tìm kiếm các cái nguồn tài chính. Thì mặc dù là chúng tôi đã đi được rất là xa, chúng tôi nhận được nhiều sự hỗ trợ, nhưng khi tìm kiếm các cái nguồn tài chính xanh, các nguồn tài chính tác động, tôi cũng gặp rất nhiều cái thách thức. Với các dự án phát triển bền vững, dự án xanh, thì đặc điểm của nó là rủi ro thấp và có cái độ an toàn rất là cao, bảo đảm cái khoản vay rất là cao. Tuy nhiên nó lại có cái đặc điểm là càng nhiều tác động thì cái việc thu hồi vốn nó sẽ thấp và sẽ kéo dài, và càng nhiều cái sự sáng tạo thì lại càng khó cho các tổ chức tài chính là đánh giá. Và với các dự án xanh ở Việt Nam thì chúng ta cần rất là nhiều cái nguồn khoản đầu tư, và với hàng chục tỷ đô, hàng trăm tỷ đô như thế, việc yêu cầu là các cái tài sản đảm bảo bổ sung như cái thị trường tài chính truyền thống của Việt Nam là rất là khó. Thì khi đi làm việc, đầu tiên là chúng tôi tiếp cận với các ngân hàng Việt Nam, và các ngân hàng Việt Nam thì làm việc theo một cách truyền thống là thường yêu cầu là phải có tài sản đảm bảo. Và các ngân hàng Việt Nam mặc dù là vốn thì nghe rất là lớn, nhưng mà vốn thực sự cho tài chính xanh thì rất là thiếu. Ngân hàng thiếu các cái cơ chế cho vay đối với các dự án xanh, và đặc biệt thiếu trầm trọng cái nguồn nhân lực để đánh giá các cái dự án xanh, dự án bền vững. Các chuyên viên tài chính của ngân hàng hiện nay chỉ quen là đi đánh giá giá trị bất động sản là bao nhiêu, và vì ngân hàng việc cho vay là dựa trên là bất động sản. Và các ngân hàng trong nước thì cũng thường là cho vay theo dạng là cho vay theo công ty, corporate financing, thay vì là cho vay dựa trên dự án. Và vì các cái nguồn vốn là thiếu và ít, nên là các cái khoản vay thường là thời gian rất là ngắn, nó không phù hợp với lại các cái dự án yêu cầu về tính bền vững và đòi hỏi là thời gian dài. Và chúng tôi cũng nghĩ rằng là các ngân hàng nên là diversify cái danh mục và đầu tư cho vay của mình, chuyển một phần từ bất động sản sang cho các cái dự án phát triển bền vững, thì như thế ngân hàng cũng sẽ là bền vững hơn. Như thời gian qua, thị trường bất động sản cũng có nhiều cái biến động, và rõ ràng chúng ta nhìn thấy là cũng có nhiều rủi ro ở đấy. Giả sử như bây giờ cần nhà nước là đánh thuế bất động sản cao lên, thì ngay lập tức là các cái khoản đầu tư bất động sản sẽ có vấn đề. Thì như thế thì nó sẽ gây cái việc là một số các rủi ro cho các ngân hàng. Trong quá trình tìm kiếm các nguồn tài chính xanh, chúng tôi rất quan tâm đến các cái nhà đầu tư tác động. Tôi nghe nói rằng là trên thế giới có cái nguồn đầu tư tác động là có hàng nghìn tỷ đô, nhưng mà tuy nhiên để tìm được các cái nhà đầu tư tác động này rất là khó với chúng tôi. Dường như là người ta là vô hình với lại những cái nhà phát triển như chúng tôi. Có một số các cái quỹ đầu tư tác động thì người ta chỉ đầu tư ở cái mức là early stage, và người ta chỉ đầu tư ở những cái khoản rất là nhỏ, và như thế thì nó không đủ để thực hiện các cái dự án lớn. Và có nhiều cái nhà đầu tư tác động khi chúng tôi tiếp cận thì người ta yêu cầu rất nhiều thứ, nào là tính bền vững, rồi phải có các báo cáo ESG, rồi phải có rất nhiều thứ, nhưng cuối cùng là lãi vay cho chúng tôi thì lại cao, thậm chí là cao hơn ngân hàng trong nước. Rồi thời gian cho vay thì lại ngắn. Thì cuối cùng thì chúng tôi phải hiểu là cái dự án tác động với dự án không tác động nó khác nhau với gì. Chúng tôi cũng tiếp cận với một số các tổ chức tài chính lớn có nguồn tài chính xanh tốt, nhưng mà các tổ chức này thường yêu cầu là các cái khoản vay phải rất là lớn, 20, 50 triệu đô, thậm chí là phải trên 100 triệu đô người ta mới làm. Và người ta thường chỉ quan tâm đến các cái khối doanh nghiệp FDI, các cái tập đoàn đa quốc gia. Người ta không sẵn sàng hợp tác với lại các cái doanh nghiệp nhỏ và vừa ở Việt Nam. Các cái tổ chức tài chính xanh này ấy, cũng đòi hỏi các cái dự án là rủi ro thấp, nhưng lại cũng yêu cầu là lãi suất là phải cao và thời gian vay cũng rất là ngắn. Thì với tất cả những cái khó khăn đấy, chúng tôi nhìn thấy là chúng ta có thể là đánh mất cái cơ hội rất là lớn trước mắt. Như các quý vị cũng biết là vừa rồi thì cái quy hoạch điện tám cũng đã ra đời và cũng đã xác định rõ là đi theo cái mục tiêu net zero chúng ta đến 2050 thì chúng ta cần là 435 gigawatt năng lượng tái tạo để giảm cái tỷ trọng năng lượng than, năng lượng hóa thạch ở trong cái cơ cấu ngành điện chúng ta. Và Việt Nam chúng ta cũng đang tổ chức để đón nhận đến hơn 15 tỷ đô cho cái việc chuyển dịch năng lượng công bằng. Và với cái nhu cầu phát triển năng lượng chỉ riêng ngành năng lượng thôi thì chúng ta cần là đến phải 13 đến 15 tỷ đô một năm. Đấy là năng lượng. Còn nếu nhìn chung cho cả nền kinh tế thì chúng ta cũng đã đặt mục tiêu net zero vào 2050 và theo đó chúng ta cần là gần 400 tỷ đô cho từ đây đến 2040. Thì đây là những cái khoản đầu tư rất là lớn và không một tổ chức tài chính nào, không một công ty nào có thể là hấp thụ được hết cái phần này. Nên đó là cái phần share có cho tất cả mọi người, và ngân hàng nào, tổ chức tài chính nào, doanh nghiệp nào càng năng động thì cái miếng bánh của mình sẽ càng lớn. Và ở đây với các khó khăn chúng tôi đã gặp, tôi nhìn thấy thì tôi đang đưa ra một cái solution mà chúng tôi nghĩ là rất khả thi. Đấy là sự hợp tác giữa tất cả các bên, ngân hàng trong nước, các tổ chức tài chính xanh, các nhà đầu tư tác động cùng hợp tác với nhau. Ngân hàng trong nước thì người ta am hiểu thị trường trong nước, tuy nhiên người ta lại thiếu các cái cơ chế vay, bị ràng buộc bởi các cái yêu cầu của ngân hàng nhà nước nên người ta không rộng đường cho vay được. Còn các tổ chức tài chính, các nhà đầu tư tác động thì có tiền nhưng là không hiểu thị trường trong nước, không hiểu thì ngân hàng khách hàng trong nước thì có thể là hợp tác với các ngân hàng trong nước để làm việc này. Và nếu một ngân hàng trong nước chưa có cơ chế vay thì có thể cung cấp các cái dịch vụ quản lý quỹ, quản lý tài chính cho các cái tổ chức tài chính xanh hay là nhà đầu tư tác động để cung cấp cái nguồn tài chính cho nhóm khách hàng, đặc biệt là khách hàng tư nhân. Tại sao chúng tôi nói về cái nhóm khách hàng tư nhân? Quý vị có thể thấy một cái so sánh là trong 20 gigawatt điện mặt trời tại Việt Nam hiện nay thì có 10 gigawatt là các cái dự án solar farm lớn, còn lại là 10 gigawatt là các dự án rooftop solar. Mà các dự án rooftop solar được phát triển phần lớn là bởi cái khối tư nhân. Người ta sử dụng các cái nguồn vốn của mình cũng như là các cái tài sản của mình để phát triển. Thì rõ ràng cái khối tư nhân này hoàn toàn không nhỏ tí nào. Nếu mà các ngân hàng trong nước, các tổ chức tài chính có các cái cơ chế hợp tác tốt để thúc đẩy thì tốc độ phát triển của nhóm này rất là cao, và nhóm này đặc biệt rất là năng động. Người ta rất sáng tạo để hình thành các cái dự án xanh, dự án bền vững. Thì đấy là ý kiến của tôi, và tôi nghĩ là việc này các bên ngồi lại với nhau thì rất là khả thi, và cũng mong là Allotrope Partners sẽ kết nối các cái nhóm tổ chức tài chính này với nhau để chúng ta có những cái nguồn tài chính tốt, chúng ta hấp thụ và chúng ta đầu tư để làm Việt Nam chúng ta là xanh hơn, bền vững hơn. Đấy là chúng tôi xin kết thúc cái bài trình bày của mình, và cũng mong là đón nhận được các cái câu hỏi, chia sẻ của quý vị.
Dạ, cảm ơn anh Đông rất nhiều đã chia sẻ rất là nhiều thông tin hữu ích cho mọi người cùng tham khảo. Hiện tại thì có một câu hỏi cho anh Đông trong phần Q&A session, đó là cho Q&A box, đó là những tài sản nào, bảo đảm nào là phổ biến cho các dự án tài trợ xanh không tính đến bất động sản. Dạ, xin mời anh Đông có cái phần chia sẻ. Dạ, có cần em đọc lại câu hỏi cho mình không ạ?
Hiện tại thì là các ngân hàng thường yêu cầu là phải có tài sản đảm bảo là bất động sản, thường là như vậy. Nhưng mà chúng tôi thường khi đi làm thì nhất là với những cái dự án mà lớn, những dự án năng lượng tái tạo thì không thể nào có các cái tài sản đảm bảo đủ lớn theo ngân hàng yêu cầu. Ngoài ra thì thường người ta cũng vừa có bất động sản và vừa cái tài sản hình thành từ vốn vay. Ví dụ như là làm điện mặt trời thì người ta sẽ yêu cầu là dùng các hệ thống điện mặt trời đấy cũng là tài sản thế chấp luôn, nên là chúng ta là đang bị double cái tài sản đảm bảo. Đấy là thực trạng hiện nay là như thế.
Dạ, cảm ơn anh Đông rất nhiều ạ. Rồi, em xin phép được tiếp tục chương trình của mình. Thank you, Mr. Dong Trần, for sharing about CES Energy's experiences in attracting and leveraging green financing for your projects. And we hope to see more and more green and sustainable projects like yours in the market, and wish you success in obtaining financing for your activities. We are keen to hear more from you in the Q&A session. Okay, and to continue our program, now we have finished all the presentations from our speakers. So I would like to invite everyone to join the Q&A session. Here we will be answering your questions in the Q&A box, as well as any that may arise. So first, I would like to welcome all of our speakers back to the stage, and Mr. Tung Ho will be our moderator for this session.
Thank you so much, Chi-Hui, for the coordination. And firstly, thank you, Anh Dong, for the insightful presentation. And we hope to come back to your point on the challenges from faced by project developers in getting the capital required for your project. But first, I'd like to go back to our two previous speakers from Mizuho Bank and from Morningstar Sustainalytics. I think perhaps a question to Mr. Motokasu-san and here on this. This one of the questions that we got beforehand from the audience. So they want to know that are there any steps in your own green finance development process that you would have taken differently, and is there any kind of significant lessons that you have learned along the way that you would like to share with local banks?
Okay, thanks a lot for your question. So actually, it's very tough to say whether the process of Mizuho is different from the other banks, because we cannot have the full picture about how the other banks are taking to develop their green finance. But based on our experience, so there are some of the items that we would like to highlight in here. So basically, first of all, we need to understand about the client transition strategy and the funding needs. The second step that we need to ensure is that we have to know about the use of the proceeds of the loan. Okay, so if the use of the proceeds of the loan is in line with, let's say, green or social purposes, so then we can have like green or social loans. Right? But if the loan is for general corporate purpose, so it is not specifically linked to any specific project. So basically, we need to confirm, and then we move to sustainability linked loan. So the ties of the transaction will depend on the use of the proceeds. Then the third point that I would like to highlight in here is that the company transition strategy needs to be consistent with the global standards. So we have various global standards like Paris Agreement, IEA, TPI, IMO, etc. So we would like to emphasize here that the company's transition strategy needs to be consistent with global standards. It's very important. And finally, we usually take second-party opinion to ensure our understanding about the alignment of ICMA principle taxonomy and to reduce the risks of greenwashing. And we work very closely with second-party opinion providers. And today we also have Sherry from Sustainalytics, right? And Sherry also cooperate very closely with the bank, including Mizuho. So it is very clear example. Okay, so these are some of our thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insight. Thank you. And we certainly agree that of the lessons that you have learned along the way, and perhaps those will be applicable to local banks as well. And you have mentioned, Cheryl and with her work under Morningstar and Sustainalytics. So I'd like to go to Cheryl for a little bit. So on the same kind of, conversation, have you as, as a SBO service provider, encounter any, common mistakes by banks when they first set up their green finance or sustainable finance framework, and perhaps how to avoid those mistakes in the earlier stages?
Yeah, so this is a good question because I have seen, if you in my presentation earlier, the typical second party opinion process should take about 4 to 5 weeks. But I've worked with a number of banks where sometimes the timeline is more than 4 to 5 weeks. In fact, it could be 3 months or 4 months. And that's not ideal for everybody because, it drags the project out too long. And the reason why the timelines become so extended is because the bank is trying to include everything possible under the sun in their framework because they want to get the most out of it. But the problem with putting too many things in your framework that you may not really finance is that you may struggle when the project team asks you about the example projects. So that's why it's a bit difficult. So my suggestion is maybe don't be too ambitious. Don't put in everything under the sun, because the idea of the framework is to communicate to bond investors what you're most likely going to finance, perhaps in the next 2 years. And also bear in mind that the standards do get updated. So you probably will have to update your framework in 2 years' time, and then you can include other use or proceed categories that you have more certainty that you will be financing. Then you have examples of projects. So this is one of the top tips I can give, is that try not to put everything possible inside the framework, because it may create a lot of problems for yourself as the bank. And yeah, ideally, you have a nice tight framework and you can always update it down the line.
That's great insight. Thank you, Cheryl. And I think certainly there will be areas that banks need to focus on. And I believe one question for Mizuho that came from the audience that we surveyed earlier. I think really from practical standpoint, are there any priorities regarding the type of loan or bond framework that you think a bank should focus on? Just like Michelle has mentioned, given their own typical financing activities and strengths, perhaps from your experience.
Sorry, the connection is not very good, so we miss you for a few seconds. Can you have to repeat the question, please?
No worries. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's okay now. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. The question is: are there any priorities regarding the type of loan or bond framework that you think a bank should focus on? Just as Cheryl has mentioned, given their strength and status in the market.
Okay. So from our personal view, so we all got to know that PDP8, Power Development Plan number 8, has already been passed by the government of Vietnam, right? And with the approval of the PDP8, so we believe that the potential for the power projects, especially green power projects, will be huge. Because until now, until 2030, so if we look into the PDP8, you can see that the focus will basically be on the wind power projects, as well as the gas-fired power projects until 2030. And the financing demand is huge. Certainly, even when we got the PDP8 approval, we still need to wait for the pricing mechanism. So to be frank, we are not really sure when the pricing mechanism will be clear enough for the projects to be bankable, right? But the potential there is there and it's huge. And we believe that it is the area that the banks will also focus on. There may be no immediate opportunity for financing over the next 6 to 12 months, but until 2030, I'm pretty sure that there will be quite a few big projects. And this will be one of the key focus until 2030, that we can provide the green financing for the power projects. And this is also one of the Mizuho key priorities. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Anh. And perhaps this is a great, section where I can turn to CAS Energy with regards to the potential in the power sector, and with the approval of the PPA and perhaps subsequent, planning and regulations and supporting policies, project developers like CAS Energy may have a chance to, get the capital they need. And I like to switch to my mother tongue for this question for anh Đông. Anh Đông có đó không ạ?
Em nói tiếp.
Dạ thì em cũng muốn hỏi một chút là CAS Energy thực ra là một trong những cái dự án em thấy khá là trọng điểm khi mà được tham gia rất là nhiều những chương trình hỗ trợ, ví dụ như là cái chương trình thách thức sáng tạo Innovation Challenge Fund của USAID, cũng như là chương trình Climate Finance Accelerator của PwC kết hợp với lại bên Đại sứ quán Anh. Thì tôi cũng muốn hỏi là so với những dự án khác khi mà không được hỗ trợ, các chương trình như vậy hỗ trợ, thì CAS Energy đã nhận được những cái giá trị gì từ những dự án này trong việc xin vốn của các nhà đầu tư cũng như là các bên cho vay như là Mizuho?
Xin phép được trả lời Tùng như thế này, tức là bên Anh đã nhận, tức là so với nhiều các nhà phát triển khác là mà không có gọi là không phải xuất phát từ là một công ty bất động sản, không phải là các cái gọi là đại gia bất động sản sở hữu rất nhiều đất để có thể là thế chấp ngân hàng, thì một cái công ty như của anh ấy là khi phát triển dự án là gặp rất nhiều khó khăn, và mặc dù ấy là cũng đã nhận được sự hỗ trợ của chương trình an ninh năng lượng đô thị cũng như là CFA, nhưng mà việc tìm kiếm cái đối tác cung hỗ trợ tài chính là phù hợp ấy, cũng đang là còn nhiều thách thức. Và phía bên CS là cũng đang hợp tác với các bên để tìm đúng cái người, đúng cái nhà đầu tư tác động. Còn với các cái khối ngân hàng trong nước hiện nay ấy, là cũng đang chưa có các cái cơ chế hỗ trợ cho các cái dự án lớn như thế này. Có thể đâu đó có các cái nhà đầu tư tác động mà gọi là VC, Venture Capital, thì người ta lại đầu tư quá ít. Ví dụ như là có thể một ticket khoảng 500.000 đô, 1 triệu đô là hết. Thì chừng đấy ấy, chỉ đủ để phát triển về solution, không đủ để xây dựng các cái dự án mà ở quy mô là scale up. Ví dụ như là cái dự án solar chẳng hạn, nó có thể là 100 triệu đô cho 100 mê, thì những cái nhà đầu tư, các cái VC đấy lại không có cái tiền đầu tư cho phần đấy. Còn khi ra bên ngoài ấy, thì lại không có cái đối tác là nó phù hợp. Ví như những cái ngân hàng lớn như IFC, ADB thì người ta chỉ làm với các cái tổ chức lớn, và một cái ticket size ấy, thì cũng phải là 20-50 triệu đô, hay kể cả là Mizuho cũng vậy. Thì những cái đối tượng như bên Anh là không tiếp cận được những cái nguồn đấy. Ngân hàng trong nước thì lại yêu cầu là phải có tài sản đảm bảo, mà có tài sản đảm bảo mà 20-50 triệu đô để làm dự án ấy, thì lúc ấy là bên Anh là thành công ty bất động sản rồi, chứ không còn là một cái nhà phát triển các cái dự án xanh hay là bền vững nữa. Và cũng chia sẻ thật là đến bây giờ là bên CS là cũng chưa tìm được cả đối tác đi cùng cho các dự án sắp tới.
Dạ, em cảm ơn anh Đông đã chia sẻ những khó khăn của CS trong thời gian qua. Cũng hỏi thêm một chút về một cái slide mà anh Đông cũng có chia sẻ là về Blended Finance Facility, những cái cơ chế mà kết hợp dòng tiền giữa, ví dụ như là dòng tiền có điều lệ thương mại theo như thị trường, là các cái như là ngân hàng thương mại như trong nước người ta đang cần có, và kết hợp với dòng tiền của những cái bên mà họ có thể không cần những cái khoản lời mà tương đương thị trường, như là các bên hỗ trợ như USAID hay là các bên ngân hàng phát triển như là World Bank chẳng hạn. thì thành một cái gọi là blended finance facility. Đó thì không biết ở Việt Nam anh Đông đã được tiếp cận với các gọi là blended finance facility như vậy hay chưa? Và nếu mà có thì thực ra là bên mình gặp khó khăn gì khi tiếp cận họ, tại vì theo em hiểu cũng có những cái bên như là climate fund manager là họ làm một cái blended finance facility ở Việt Nam.
Bên mình cũng có tiếp cận với các cái khoản vay khi mình nghe các ngân hàng trong nước á, là có nhận được các cái khoản tài trợ tín dụng xanh từ IFC, từ ADB, từ World Bank, thì mình cũng có tiếp cận với các ngân hàng đấy. Nhưng thường các ngân hàng trả lời với mình á, nếu mà anh đầu tư bất động sản hay là mua xe, mua nhà mua xe thì em tài trợ được, và các cái khoản tài chính xanh đấy á, là sẽ gọi là xanh cho nó vui thì thôi sẽ giảm giá cho anh là 0,5 đến 1% là hết. Thì thực ra là nó như thế nó không có xanh. Thì cũng có thể đâu đó là các ngân hàng trong nước người ta bị các cái rào cản về quy định cho vay là phải có tài sản đảm bảo mặc dù là ủy thác. Thì nên đó là có thể thay cái cách làm một xíu, là có thể là bây giờ ngân hàng trong nước là cung cấp dịch vụ quản lý các cái khoản đầu tư đấy, thì có thể là ngân hàng trong nước sẽ không bị các cái rào cản như là theo quy định của ngân hàng nhà nước nữa. Các tổ chức kia vẫn là bên cho vay, và các ngân hàng local bank là giúp cho các bên kia là giải ngân các khoản vay cũng như là quản lý các khoản vay, thì sẽ tháo gỡ được cái rào cản từ các cái ngân hàng, các tổ chức tài chính lớn, người ta không thể làm các deal nhỏ, không thể đi quản lý các cái dự án bé, thì ngân hàng trong nước sẽ giúp làm việc đấy. Và ngân hàng trong nước thì không có cơ chế vay cho các dự án xanh hiện tại, thì lại dùng các cái phần mà tài chính xanh từ các cái tổ chức khác, và các bên sẽ cùng nhau là học và từ từ sẽ tìm được các cái cơ chế tài chính là phù hợp hơn. Thì đấy là theo ý kiến của CS, và CS nghĩ cái đấy phương án đấy là khả thi.
Và em cảm ơn anh Đông thì rất là nhiều. Em cũng thấy là còn một hai câu hỏi trong phần chat. Do thời lượng chương trình không có nhiều cho nên cũng xin phép anh Đông nếu mà được thì sẽ trả lời câu hỏi ở trong phần Q&A box. Sau khi em sẽ quay lại với lại hai diễn giả bên Mizuho và Sustainalytics trước khi khép lại chương trình. So xin trở lại bằng tiếng Anh. So I'd like to perhaps, I think there are wonderful questions coming in, but we have limited time. So I'd like to close the webinar with two last questions for our speakers. I think perhaps first for Mizuho, talking about green products and the kind of demand for that in the market right now. I would like to turn to Mizuho to ask one question, like in terms of the portfolio of green products that you build for your client, how did you go about building the portfolio of green products for potential clients like Cash Energy or other developers, and what are the key lessons learned?
Okay, so thanks for your question. So I also heard the answer from Mr. Dong from CSS Energy, and I have to say that basically he correctly pointed out the challenges for the small project developers like CIS. But from the bank's standpoint, I can also say that basically it is the way that the banks look at the projects and project developers. Because whether the project is green or not, social or not, the most important thing for the bank is still about the project size and the bankability of the project, right? And first of all, the project itself needs to be bankable. The cash flow should be sufficient. On top of that, the bank will also need to look at the quality of the project sponsors. And finally, certainly, as Mr. Dong also mentioned, the quality of the asset collateral in this case, right? So as Mr. Dong mentioned, I think for Mizuho in particular and different banks in general, or some other big financial institutions, we normally will not consider the small projects or the very small projects. But instead of that, we can consider the various ways to support these project developers. So to take an example, in March, so we completed a financing together with JBIC for Vietcombank. and the size of the transaction was $300 million. Okay, and the purpose of the loan was also to support with green financing. So it means that in this case, Mizuho may not be able to reach to all types of project sponsor at various sizes, but via Vietcombank, we can indirectly support the projects with the green purpose. So this is one example. Okay. Apart from that, certainly, we also look at the clients whereby we can finance directly with their projects. And taking a step back, as I mentioned, for the PDP8. So we see a lot of potential to find the good projects with the developers on that. But we also need to wait for the further guideline from the government about the pricing mechanism, about the tariff, to see whether the project is bankable or not. And if project is not fully bankable, so at that time, we also need the other types of structure. For example, we may need to have the limited recourse from the parent company of the project developer, or we need to have some credit enhancement from some of the top tier local banks in Vietnam. Or we may also have to look at some type of ECA-backed financing. So these are some of the examples that we need to look at from various aspects to make the project from being unbankable to bankable. And this is the way that we develop the portfolio in here and support with the project sponsor in Vietnam. Thank you. Hope that it's clear now.
Thank you so much for your answer, Ingrid, and the kind of insight into how the bank process, and also with the wonderful sharing of the work you've done with JBIC and with Vietcombank earlier in this year. I think to close the Q&A session, one last, perhaps we can leave on a good note to Cheryl. I mean, in terms, the webinar is about green or sustainable finance framework. Have you observed any uptick of the issuance of these frameworks in the region, whether that is the ASEAN or Asia? And in your opinion, what should be, in terms of policies and perhaps, supporting, context, what should be in place for countries to see more of their banks issuing these frameworks and products in?
Yes, so yeah, happy to finish up today's Q&A. So yes, I've been covering this space for 3.5 years now, and it's very heartening to see, some markets wake up. So just to give you an example, I think Indonesia is a very good example because they hosted the G20 last year. That sparked a lot of grassroots efforts as well. So you saw a lot of the leading domestic banks started to issue. And yeah, so you have, perhaps a major event that you're hosting, and then the sovereign, very often, if let's say the sovereign issuers, that also spurs a lot of banks to actually get into action. So I would say these are the two ingredients, but we've seen India also waking up, Indonesia waking up, Philippines. So Vietnam, we've also been working with Vietnam, and also hopefully Cambodia. We'll start to see some action there as well. Thank you.
That's wonderful. And I do hope that, Vietnam will see more of these issuance in the near future. And with that, I'd like to close the Q&A sessions. If the audience have any further questions, feel free to direct it to us, and then we'll try to get some answer from our speakers at a later point. So I'd like to perhaps return the floor to my colleague Ray to close the webinar. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tung, and thank you our speakers so much for your insightful answers to our audience questions. And we look forward to receiving more inquiries from the audience via email after this webinar. And so now we have covered all the topics that we have for our program today. Before closing the event, I would like to express our special thanks to all the speakers for your invaluable contribution and insights, which we believe will be of great help for other stakeholders on their green finance journey. And our sincere thanks to all the participants for joining us today. It's now time to say goodbye, and we hope to welcome you again soon in our upcoming events. Goodbye, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.